triplets, sometimes even 4 babies, quadruplets. That is a huge risk factor.
Well, hello there. It's good to see you right here on Your World. My name is Winnie Lubembe, hoping that you are having a better start to the day. And while we're hoping that you're having a better start to the day, today's conversation is pretty heavy, and we'll be focusing on postpartum hemorrhage. And this is actually a leading cause of maternal mortality worldwide. And the biggest question is, why are we still losing women in 2024 to postpartum hemorrhage? What is it that we can do to prevent that? And this is across all levels, from communities to maybe professionals, as well as county and national governments. There's so much that we need to cover on postpartum hemorrhage, but first we'll speak to Mr. Ronald, who unfortunately lost his wife after delivering twins to postpartum hemorrhage. That conversation is coming up right after this.
Postpartum hemorrhage, also known as PPH, is defined as severe bleeding after childbirth, is the leading cause of maternal mortality worldwide. Each year, about 14 million women experience PPH, resulting in about 70,000 maternal deaths globally. Death from PPH is largely preventable and has been nearly eliminated in high-income countries, yet women in low- and middle-income countries continue to be extremely affected.
Now, one of the most exciting parts about pregnancy is looking forward to not only seeing the baby or touching the baby or carrying the baby for the first time, but having the mother and the baby back at home, safe and sound. But unfortunately, sometimes this doesn't happen all the time. And this is one of the topics that we are tackling, and that is postpartum hemorrhage. And we have Mr. Ronald Otieno, who unfortunately lost his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. And he's here today to share his journey and his story and how he's doing right now. And Ronald, we say thank you.
Yes.
First of all, for agreeing to speak with us. I know it's still a heavy topic for you, right? But here you are today. So asante sana.
Most welcome.
Can we go back to 2020? Let's talk about, first of all, you and your late wife. How was it? And let's talk about the pregnancy journey before the birth of your twins.
Yes. Okay, ilikuwa 2020, nilikuwa tumeanza kuishi. Yeah. Then corona came, pregnancy came. Kenda kufanya ultrasound at first. Before tufanya ultrasound, unajua ni mtoto ni mmoja. Tukabai vitu za mtoto mmoja, tukajua mtoto ni mmoja. Then after 6 months, akamwona daktari aenda kufanya ultrasound, akienda clinic. So after kufanya ultrasound tukapata ni twins. We had to go back to factory setting.
Yes.
Kununua vitu za watoto wawili. Ilikuwa mimi ndo najua, mimi na yeye, and we are very happy.
Yeah.
Expecting. Tutakuwa wazazi when kama si October. Ilikuwa ni October sasa.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, haikuwa happen. Juu ilikuwa jani ngumu sana. Yeah.
Okay.
Mka akatusaidia, tukaenda hospitali. Akajifungua twins.
Alifungua through CS?
Through CS.
CS, okay.
Yeah. But pia alipoteza damu mingi sana. Na damu alikuwa na damu kidogo. So we had to bring some people to donate some. Yeah. But unfortunately, after kuza, alikaa 2 weeks usina akapass. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Akaniacha na watoto wawili. Twins, 2 weeks old.
Yeah. And this was, I don't know, like your first pregnancy, watoto wa kwanza.
Watoto wa kwanza.
Yeah.
Ilikuwa kazi ngumu, ndio ulikuwa tukienda hospitali, ukipeleka bibi hospitali, kuna expectation, hata expectation unataka ukitoka unatoka na familia yako ukikuja nao. But the saddest part ni unaacha bibi wa moga, atoka na watoto. Kitu chungu sana. It was very trying time hiyo nyakati. Asiwezi tamani mtu apite kitu kama hiyo. Yeah. Juu ni uchungu. Dream, juu sasa unaona amekufa kwa mochari, mtoto wako nasari. Unajago hizi vitu zote. Corona ndio hiyo pia hapo. Uwezi ingia kwa ward kuona mtu. Yeah. Na ukienda pia hospitali unaenda na gate pass.
So watoto unawaacha nyumbani because
hapana, walikuwa nasari.
Walibaki nasari.
Mama walijifungua, watoto wako na shida. Ama ndo alikuwa na shida. Watoto wakabaki nasari, mama akiwa anaangaliwa na daktari.
Okay. All right. So And during he like birth process, right? So labor force alipata labor, mkaenda hospitali, right? Akapelekwa CS.
Yes.
Yeah. So during that process, watoto wakizaliwa is when she was bleeding sana, right? Yeah. Was that contained at that time? Like, would you know? Because this is like 2 weeks later is when unfortunately she died. Yeah.
Hiyo process ya labor ilikuwa sidasema ikuwa ngumu. Alienda akajifungua, daktari alikuwa na contain lakini alikuwa na bleeding. Sababu hiyo nyakati daktari alikuwa very busy Kenyatta. Mambo na corona na huko. So daktari alikuwa anamwona usiku saa 9 I guess. Ndio alikuwa anamwona daktari anamwona usiku, si mchana. Yeah. So hapo mchana anabaki na nurse tu.
Okay. So how was she? Hiyo time alikuwa anaangaliwa na nurse.
For the first week she was very strong. Jovel alikuwa anatembea. But the second week alikuja akakuwa weak. Sasa atembei. Anambia damu amelose damu na yuko sawa. Hapo ndo nikaita ndugu yangu na rafiki zangu wakuja wakatoa damu.
So wamedonate damu akaekewa but still
hata alikufa akiwa kwa Yesu alikufa alikuwa amekewa damu akakufa. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, let's just first of all stick with this period, right? So your new dad, watoto ndo hawa twins, bado wakapelekwa nursery, right? And then you also have to deal with this fact that, you know, your wife was okay, and then hayuko sawa. You know, can we just talk about how this was for you, like mentally,
nilikuwa nataka kuja
physically? Yeah.
Akiwa ward, nilikuwa nataka kuuliza daktari nini namfanya, mbona unaona? Na pia wife alikuwa anauliza mbona hawezi kwa discharge. Na daktari amesema huwezi toka mpaka siku yenye ataamua kunidischarge. Alikuwa na monitor. So after kudonate damu, hiyo siku itusona Sunday, 8 November 2020. Nilikuwa kuna daktari sana but sikumuona. So after kudonate damu, tukakaa naye kwenye tumekaa hapo mimi na yeye tunapiga story. Ananiambia baba yao, enda home, wende unyoshe nguo. Zingine unilete kesho ukienda job, ukuje uone watoto.
Okay.
Simi nikatoka. Ilikuwa kitu saa 9. Anjeke akakuja, akana auntie yake hapo. Akasema yuko na auntie yako, acha mimi niende. Utabaki na auntie kumkipiga story. Kumbe yeye ndio alikuwa anakufa na mimi sikuwa najua. Kama alikuwa anataka niende, ndio akufa. So mimi nimetoka, nimeenda, nimepanda gari, niko all sops. Na siogo inapigwa na sikuwa nasikia. So mtu amekakana akaniambia, kijana simu yako inapigwa. Kupata simu napata niko na miss call 2 na simu ilikuwa inalia. Sasa kushika kamba Ronald kandi unaweza rudi Kenyatta. Mimi ndio daktari nilikuwa nataka kuongea naye. Ngoja nikwambie nini mbaya.
Okay.
Si nikashika gari tena nikarudi. Sasa mimi najua finally najua naenda kuambia nini mbaya. Kufika Kenyatta napata anakiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Ambiwa pole, amekufa. Sasa nilikuwa napata anakiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Ilikuwa ngumu sana.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Nilipata ametolewa kwa ward, amekuwa kwa sasa kwa room peke yake.
Separate.
Yeah, ndio ashakufa sana anakiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Kaambia tu pole, tujaribu kumsaidia wetu tunaweza bara tunge saidia hapo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's gone.
She's gone.
Did you try to like find answers, because umekuwa tu na yeye a few minutes ago?
30 minutes.
How was she, like, what was the last thing you remember before umwache, like, yeah, in terms of the state that she was in?
Alikuwa tu weak, hakuwa strong sana, alikuwa weak. Juu pia alikuwa muongezewa damu na drip ya maji. So alikuwa weak kiasi.
Yeah.
Yeah, lakini hakuwa mtu anaweza kufa hiyo masaa. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So did you try to find answers, like when you knew within the 30 minutes, now napigwa simu and the state that you find her is she's normal?
I tried, but tata aliniambia tu kijaribu kuulizia utapata. Nurse mwenye alikuwa hapo kaniambia tu kijaribu kuulizia utapata answers. Mambo ya Mungu imefanyika. Ikubali tu sasa. Asikuwa ikubali. Juade kusing kwangu hiyo masaa. Nikapigia watu, kakuja kazini yangu, kakuja kapikia aunti yangu mmoja alikuwa Nairobi, juu sina baba Nairobi, baba kushago. Kuja kaongea nao, wakaona body. Mimi bado hata sing kwangu. Najua amekufa but pana. Mpaka nikarudi kwa nyumba. Haikuwa imesink. Mpaka nikakuja kwa nyumba nikaenda nikakaa na marafiki zangu. Sijawaambia hata nini imefanyika. Juu nashangaa ndaanza kuwaambiaje. tumedonate damu nini tena. So kitu nilifanya ndio kwa zangu wajue, kinaenda pale kwa social media yangu nikaandika rest in peace love. Hivyo watu walikuja wakajua. Mimi singeweza ambia watu. Yeah.
And at this time, so you have to first of all deal with the fact that your wife Amanda may pass, and then you have twins. At what point then, like, did you think that she's no more, Amanda?
The next day.
And you have to, okay.
The next day, because niliambiwa, yes, amekufa, kuja kesho ufanye clearance ya ward, wakina mochari sasa. Nikaenda, nikapatiwa vitu zake, simu, vitabu, nguo. Nikaambiwa sasa, you have to clear hii hapa, ubaki na watoto kwa nursery, na mwili kwa morgue. So pia nikaenda kwa morgue tena kumuona. Sasa ikanihit sasa ukweli. She's no more.
She's no more.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, this is just... Yeah.
Ilikuwa ngumu, but nilikuwa peke yangu. I expecting watu watanisaidia kwa hiyo jani, but pia nimekwambia watu wako busy na watu wana shida zao. So nitatembea na wewe hakuna.
Yeah.
So nilikuwa nakuja mochari.
Peke yako?
Yeah. For 2 weeks.
Watoto walikaa nursery for how long?
Walikaa 1 month. 1 month walikuwa set, walikuwa na shida. Malipo kuwapeleka nikitafuta malipo ndio wapeleka. So ndo maana walikaa huko. Pia niliambiwa niende nishughulikie mama yao nimzike kwanza. Kuja nichukue watoto. Yeah.
So how were you? Like, and I think that's the biggest question, because you have to deal with like all those things, and then uko peke yako,
it was emotionally draining. Kabisa. Hata usingizi, appetite ilikuwa imeisha. Imagine mimi kwa sababu na maji na chai. Sikuwa natemea kwenda kwa watu, juu nilikuwa nalala, asubuhi naenda nashinda Kenyatta. Ilikuwa almost for 1 month. So ilikuwa kazi ngumu sana. Ukienda Kenyatta, pia kwa nursery, huwezi ingia tu juu uingia. Utaka ingia, si kama nitemea corona. Ya watoto ni delicate sana. So for the first days nilikuwa naleta watoto kwa mlango naona kwa mlango.
Hakuna hata hiyo like physical contact in any way. Through glasses.
Maka nikapimwa corona. Hapo ndo nikaambiwa kubali kuingia kwa watoto. So ukiingia hii bed yao, wamekaa hapa. Nasoma kando kiasi. Sisi wakaribu sama nini. Na waona. So after 3 weeks, sasa nikaanza kubonda nao, nakuja, nafungua. Nafuna kana wiki for like 2 hours. Yeah, bonding. Watamani ulie, watamani ucheke.
You so can, yeah.
Lakini ananiambia nisikuwe na emotion, nikuwe strong. The emotion pia watu ni kama tuko attached nao sasa.
They feel.
Why were strong.
Yeah. But why you really like,
it was a routine, daily routine. Yeah. Wale majimi nimekaa na watoto, mimi ni mbaba, huko wengine ni mama wote. So unapia na it's a very awkward situation and weird kwangu.
Yeah. But at that point, like ile unaambiwa you have to be strong, and we hear this a lot of the times, and especially for men. Ile unaambiwa, but you have to be strong you have to be strong. Or even instances where maybe a family has lost a child either through miscarriage and whatnot. Is the husband ule anaambiwa, just be strong for your wife, be strong for your wife. But now, so here you are alone with the children. Your wife has passed on, and you're told you have to show no emotions and all things because your children need you. So how were you able to do that?
Kama mwanaume tu, una accept. Ndipo unajua unaumia, but unaeka ile strong also. Facially, watu strong. But deep down, una bleed. Machozi narudi ndani ukilia. Utaki kuonesha. Yeah. It was very emotional. Sasa kudanganya. Kabisa.
Yeah.
Yenye sisi kama mtu apitie. Yeah. Au pia kuongea ni shida.
Yeah.
We explain, mambo hata kuelewa na explain nini, juu watu wengi wajapitia situation kama hiyo.
So watoto kaka kwa, I mean, eventually preparations nini.
Watoto zinaendelea, preparation ya matanga pia inaendelea. So after burial, nilitulizika 28 November. Eka nyumbani 2 days nikakuja Nairobi.
Sasa bado watoto wako hospitali.
Wako hospitali.
Okay.
So nilikuwa na communicate na nurse. Kuna mwenye alikuwa night shift na day shift. Na pia kuna hapa na tuko pia ni nurse. Alikuwa nenda anaangalia. Amekuwa supportive sana staff kwa nani. Alikuwa anaangalia na anawachunga. So nurse alikuwa ananiambia, "Unakuja siku gani? Sasa imefika time, uchukue." Sio ni pressure nyingine.
Okay.
Watakuwa chukua ndio wapeleka wapi? Niko peke yangu, sijui kulea, breastfeed ndio hiyo. Wewe akakuja akaniambia nitakusaidia. Tafuta mtu ama nurse Kenyatta jumeka huko utapata nurse. Akuja Kenya ndo ndakulipia hiyo nurse. Nurse nilipata ilikuwa very expensive. Alikuwa anataka 6,000 per day. Na Sunday anaenda kwenda off. Sasa mimi nashanga Sunday nakanaje na watu.
Fanyaje, yeah.
So nilikuja nikamwambia akaniambia hapana, hiyo ni expensive na kama ni hivyo tafuta mtu mwingine. Tuka tafute mama mzee. Kwa sababu mama mzee ananiishi na twins vizuri. Tukatafuta tukapata. But tena yeye alikuwa anataka Sunday anapewa off. Sasa hiyo Sunday kienda off nani atakaa na watoto. Kwa hapana haiwezekani. Tafuta orphanage. Yeah. Sasa ndio tena kizungumkuti kingine ikaanza.
Okay.
Uja sina mama, sina sister. So orphanage was the best option. Za Nairobi kutafuta ilikuwa bit challenge. Then nilipata unaambiwa ukipeleka watoto ni kama unawauza.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ukipeleka watoto huko mtu anaweza kuja adapt anytime anataka. Anytime ako free, awachukue. So siku moja nikiwa Kenyatta, nikishughulika tu za nashughulika, mtu akaniita akaniambia Roni, watu waniita Roni. Mambo poa. Mimi niko najua kuna shida fulani na nataka kuniuzia watoto.
What?
Yeah. Mtu sivali nijua sijajua mpaka leo. Alikuwa anataka nimuuzie watoto 10M Junior twins. Wamekuwa sasa niko na 500 mbele nyuma. Anaonyesha the appointment ya 500k. Hakuna hiyo cash. Nashangaa sasa anajaribu kuniambia nini. Baada nikamwambia ni sawa, kanipatia kadi, nikamwambia ni sawa, nitakupigia. Hiyo kadi nilikuwa nikitupata hapo kwa dust. Next siku na naomba.
Yeah.
Nikasahau hiyo story. So after ikienda sasa natafuta mwenye tupeleka watoto. Huko nyumbani watu wako ready kwa watoto. Watoto vile ni stress. Twins. Hawana mtu wa kunyonya. Mtu wa kuwachunga, wanalia. Usoni Kenyatta walinifundisha vizuri. Walinifundisha watoto wanakula after 3 hours.
Okay. Usiache kind of just sana
after 3 hours.
Yeah. After every 3 hours unawafeed. Yeah.
Wanapatia nani? Kenyatta walikuwa supporting sana, sita kudanganya. So nikatafuta orphanage nikakosa. Nairobi nikakosa. Tukapata SOS. SOS walikuwa na watoto 6 months. After 6 months nende niwachukue. Baada ya 6 months bado walikuwa wadogo, ningewapeleka wapi? Kwetu mimi ndio second born. Sasa kuna mtu akona bibi kwetu, brother yangu mkubwa wananifuata, wajaoa bado. Sasa ilikuwa kazi ngumu. So auntie yangu fulani akatoka Ushago akaniambia kuna missionary orphanage iko Bondo. Ataenda ongea nao ni kama ready kuchukua watoto. Lakini wali accept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sasa hiyo ni jani nyingine tena na kufikiria niko Nairobi watoto wanapelekwa Bondo.
Yeah.
Naona.
Your separation because
Separation
again,
tena.
yeah, right? You had bonded, you know.
Na ukienda tena kuandika agreement, lazima kuje kuona daily. Nini? Kwa month twice. Na twice wanakuja unakaa nao kubond.
Okay.
Na nyakati ya corona bado fair.
True, yeah. And there's also pay restriction ya movement,
movement,
right? Yeah.
So tukaenda tukaangalia, wakakubali, tukachukua watoto, tukawapeleka.
So at this point wako how many months?
1 month.
Hajapita
bado 1 month.
Okay, all right.
Tena bado niwachukua tena, ikakuwa tena shida nyingine. Watu wakina bibi wanasema nimeiba watoto, naenda kuwauza. Yeah. So na emergency karibu ni kwe mwendo wazimu sasa.
Yeah, because it's a lot of
Kama umechukua watoto waje hatujaona watoto. Ndio yenyewe katu ungeenda kusema kwambia corona ungeenda usiku na watoto. Sambaka ungewatoa watu wakuje waone. Pia ile mkipeleka watoto kwa nyumba, watu wasikuje kuwaona bado juu wadogo na hiyo corona. Sasa vitu ni watu haraka ni wapi?
No, did they try to come and at least see the kids, waone watoto, bond with the kids, like, but they have...
Wakina bibi anti walijaribu kama uwezi ingia, okay. Restriction, kama uwezi si mzazi, ama next of kin, hata kama ni shosho yake, hauwezi. Yeah. When niliwatoa, nilikuwa tu Nairobi, walala tu 1 night. The next day tukawasafirisha. Yeah. So tukienda kwa every 3 hours, kuna gari.
Unasimama,
kando,
at least,
unawapatia.
Yeah. Okay.
Nitoka Kenyatta walinipatia pampers mingi sana, na nan.
At least you have support.
And only particular support for 4 months.
Okay.
Kenyatta was really very supportive.
That's really, really good. Okay. So eventually resolved the whole aspect about where neighbor watoto unapeleka wapi. That was resolved.
No.
Okay.
Resolved.
Yeah.
So walikuwa mpaka wanaambia ni neighbor. So they had to send someone confirm watoto wako.
Oh, okay.
Ya kupata watoto wako mlipa hapo ndo walitulia.
All right, I see that. So mkawapeleka orphanage, but unfortunately 3 months.
Kukaa, walikuwa nakaa, nakwambia ilikuwa hectic. Every month naenda ushago mara 2. And transport ilikuwa shida. Fare na transport. Juu pia ilikuwa na curfew by saa fulani.
Yeah.
Kwa iko barabara.
Yeah.
So ndio unfortunately after 3 months, hata nikiushago mtoto ni mgonjwa. Nimeenda kumuona na mbwa ni mgonjwa.
Okay.
So nimeenda kumuona na mbwa ni mgonjwa, lakini mbwa ni siku na wasiwasi atakuwa sawa. Napanda gari narudi. Kufika Limuru na mtoto amezidiwa. Unatakikana ushago. Hapo tena nishuke nitafute lori sasa, jua kuna gari. Nipande lori niende na ushago.
Yeah.
Ushago na mtoto ni ako sawa. Sasa tena kurudi Nairobi, nafika Limuru na mbwa. Sorry, jana amepass.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kwa gari hivi unalia, dereva anashangaa mwanaume analia nini? Nini unalia kijana? Kule nini naambia hapana. Niko tu sawa. Dereva nikakana naambia watu, tulieni kijana kama anaumia, naambia hapana, siko na twende. Sasa naamua kumfungulia. Hata nikirudisha kwa dereva alinipatia fare kurudi. Naambia chukua wewe rudi ushago. Ni uchungu. Sasa kufika ushago napata kijana amekufa. 3 days burial preparation. Tunamzika na baki na msichana.
Yeah.
Tunaendelea na maisha.
Yeah.
Ilikuwa watu wamekuwa very supportive. Sitaki kudanganya. Kwa mekane 3 years. Nimechukua mtoto wangu hii mwaka.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at least in between ulikuwa naenda na muona and all this.
Ulikuwa naenda kumuona every month.
Yeah.
Bonding tunakaa naye. Nampelekea vitu nakaa naye. Ndio kwamba ilikuwa chani ngumu. Kuna mtu kwetu alienda kuona watoto wangu huko.
And then there's usually a lot of things happening. A lot of kusema, amefanywa hii. Then there's a lot of like...
Dali basa na kwanza niko baba yangu. Anaenda. Rafiki zangu wanatoka Nairobi wanaenda shago. Na huko kuona. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much because there's the mental, health aspect. Where like through all these things, because it's like you are go, that hauna time yako ya kujieta fikiria, like ama tatu ukae chini, everything sinks in, you deal with everything else that imefanyika. But at some point, like, were you able to, maybe at a seek professional help? Because it's a lot for one person to go through in a very short amount of time.
Sikumata imo ndo nimeanza kuongelea. So, hapa nipata na Dr. Kireki. Nimeanza kuongelea mimi sikuongelea. Juu niliona watu wamenisidline. Na sasa nataka kuwa strong. Kabidi tu nikae na shida zangu.
But talking about it doesn't matter ni nani, whether professional or not. Like just talking about it at least in a
kuna mtu nimeongelea kuhusu.
Right? Yeah.
Rafiki yangu tu nakwambia walikuwa najua. Wali msema tu unaenda mtoto kwa ushago. Anaitwa Fred. Akachukua gari akalipa gari tukaenda mpaka ushago kuona mtoto. Yeah. And he's been mtu supporting sana stakudanganya.
Yeah. At least you have had support from, different quarters. Yeah. But wewe, like right now, leo tuko hapa tunaongea, how are you? How are you doing?
Yes, nisema tu niko sawa. Saa zingine, akaive kwa nyumba, nafikiria sana. What if angekuwa, what if ingefanyika? Yeah, vitu kama hizo, what if tungekuwa pamoja, tumekuwa wapi, watoto wangekuwaje?
Yeah.
What if ule angekufa?
Yeah.
Hizo ndio ziko kwa akili yangu. What if ni mingi sana?
Yeah.
But sina answer.
Okay, so at this point you are, because then you can't explain how you are, whether you're okay or not, but
niko sawa.
Uko sawa.
Niko naambia watu niko sawa.
Uko sawa. So what is it that you'd like then for people to know? Because again, losing your wife, because vile unasema, your biggest dream was not just to, watoto wazaliwe na wako healthy, but also your wife akwe sawa and wewe na familia yako mtoke wote hospitali, mkuje nyumbani, right? But that did not happen, unfortunately. So what is it that you'd like to tell people, whether it's, like healthcare facilities, people who might be going through, what you went through?
Shida kubwa, nilikuja kuona, kuna damu kidogo sana kwa blood, for banks. Yeah. So kuna mgonjwa anataka damu, hawezi kupatia. Kama kuja ulete watu wa donate. Ndio wakitoa sasa wajue zinaingia huko.
Clearly, there's a very big gap on what is happening.
Yeah.
Okay, but what would be your message then to, either the government or the general population? Because there's so many facets to your story, and unfortunately, it's just one person, like in this case, you, who've gone through all those things. So, what would be your message to the people who are watching us, and even maybe to like government agencies and whatnot?
Sasa kwa lana watch, mimi naweza waambia kama uko na watu wana support, ndio watu kana waambie shida unapitia, wa support. Unfortunately, mimi sikuwa na watu wanaweza kwa kuridi kunisikia. That's why nilibeba shida zangu peke yangu. Pande ya maternity, government inafaa tu invest sana. Azini ukipeleka hata mtu kujifungua mahali, msiku una referred enda kwingine. Na kuangalia watu wanaenda kujifungua. Niliona ni process kubwa sana huko. Na mimi naheshimu mtu mama mimi nakoleba katoka, hakuna heshima zangu zote. Mimi nilijionea. Siku rahisi.
All right. Thank you very much, Ronald. If there's anyone who maybe would want to offer that support, like mental support for you, would you be open to just go through a counselor and speak about it? And
very open.
You'll be open. Okay, all right. But for now, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Very, very heavy that I don't even know how to bridge from this to the next video part. But you're strong. The fact that umeketi hapa ukatuongelesha, really appreciate that.
Nilikuwa nalipa. Kwa duration fulani, kazi ilikuja ikaisha. Nikakuwa ni bila kazi.
Okay.
So nilikuwa na balance huko. Nipeleka hata mbio nafikiri vile ndani nimalize.
Yeah. So there's as much support as you can get. That would be.
Yeah, balance huko nikimaliza tu ndio nikula kichwa sasa hivi. Ndani nimalize. But na jaribu kutafuta pesa vile naweza pia. Nikiona deo 52,000.
Yeah. So any form of support you would appreciate. Okay. Thank you so much. And we really hope that you will get that, that kind of support. And maybe for the people who are watching us today, they would want to support you. Maybe is there like a number, a way that they can reach you?
My number is 0715 55 30 49.
Okay.
You go on 24/7.
Okay. Yeah. So, and like you said, you're also open to get like mental health support as well. Okay. Thank you very much, Ronald. And all the very best in picking yourself up pole. Like you said, she's a girl. She's turning 4 years right now. So all the very best as well. And we pray that you will get healing even as you raise your child, right?
Healing is a process.
It is a process.
Not one healing without.
Process. Yes. Yeah. So pole through.
Pole.
Yeah, pole. You'll get there.
Well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ronald Otieno, sharing his journey after unfortunately losing his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. On the other side of the break, we'll be speaking to Dr. Kireki, who will take us then through the entire process, just understanding what postpartum hemorrhage is, what are some of the risk factors for the same, and what can be done to prevent. But that is coming up after the break. Stay with us. The show is Your World.
As a newly regulated deposit-taking SACCO, Mhasibu is here for all professionals, offering secure and flexible products and services, all under one roof. Whether you're saving for a brighter future or investing in your dreams, become a member now and start your journey to financial success.
Touched by the tender nature of strawberry fruits that enfold you with an ever-hugging sweetness is the new Strawberry Kisses lotion from Zoe.
Angela just told me she was expecting my child. She wanted to blackmail me. I had to make her realize that I absolutely have no more feelings towards her.
Your ability to tell lies is incredible, Alvaro.
I'm telling you the truth.
Why does everything have to be so difficult? Angela, my dear, it'll be okay. Stop crying. That unborn child is a blessing to you.
Your guy is obviously unfaithful. He was married to 2 women and one of them is now pregnant.
If you're not going to help me, then stop meddling.
Darling, please.
Don't get in my way.
You are the one.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Are you curious about that dazzling look? How do you define beauty? And how to dress elegant, glitz, and glamorous. The Glam Show is here to answer all those questions and show you what's popping and what's the latest in the beauty and lifestyle world, because you need it. Look your best and fall in love with Into the Glam, only on NTV.
All right, welcome back. And just in case you missed the first part of the conversation, today we're focusing on postpartum hemorrhage. And we spoke to Mr. Ronald, who unfortunately lost his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. But just to get to understand more about the same and why it actually happens, we have Dr. Kireki Omano, who's the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society of Kenya, to help us really understand this and what are some of the ways that we can do to prevent the same. So Dr. Kireki, thank you so much. It's good to see you once again. I'm tempted to say Happy New Year, but then we're close to the, to the end of the year. But it's so good to see you.
Yes.
Sad story from Ronald. And, yes. and the biggest question is, in 2024, why are we still losing lives and women really to postpartum hemorrhage? But before that, can we first of all understand, when we say postpartum hemorrhage, what exactly does that mean?
Thank you very much for actually coming, for inviting me to talk about postpartum hemorrhage. And I want to say that you asked in 2024, why are women still dying because of postpartum hemorrhage? I think it is an indictment to all of us, whether it is in government, whether they are policymakers, that we have these cases. And our statistics are not very good, because the government of Kenya says that we lose approximately 355 women out of every 100,000 women who deliver. So in essence, what we are saying, that if 1 million women deliver, we lose 3,550. International organizations give a different figure, a slightly higher figure, about 5,500 women out of every 1 million women who deliver. So whichever way we look at it, whether it's 355 out of every 100,000 or whether it's 550, it is still a huge number.
One life lost is
life lost is one life too many. What is postpartum hemorrhage? When a woman is unexpectant, actually the size of the womb is about the size of my hand. That is the size of the womb.
All right.
Now, David in Psalms, I think it's 134 verse 19, he says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there is no better explanation to what David saw than what the changes that happen in a woman's body when she gets pregnant. Because remember, the size is about that big of a non-pregnant, non-gravid uterus. And then when pregnancy occurs, by the time it is 9-10 months, that womb has stretched to be able to accommodate a baby. Maybe 3 kilos, 3.5 kilos, sometimes even more. 4 kilos, sometimes even more. And then apart from that, it also accommodates amniotic fluid, which acts like a shock absorber for the baby, and also some form of That is what the baby drinks, and that's what the baby urinates. And then there is also what we call the placenta. The placenta is an organ which connects the mother to the baby through the cord. That is why we have a small wall, not wall, but a remnant of that cord on our abdomens. Now, when a woman delivers, whether it is naturally, vaginally, or whether it is through a cesarean section, what happens is once the baby has come out, the amniotic fluid has come out, the baby comes out, the placenta also comes out. And as it does that, the uterus contracts. Now, remember, the placenta is where the nutrients pass through to get to the baby. And also, some of the waste products also pass through that way to get to the mother's system and out of the body. Now, there are blood vessels through the uterus which connect now the placenta. And these blood vessels must contract after the placenta has come out in order to stop the bleeding. There is a small amount of bleeding. When a woman delivers vaginally, it's about 150, 200 milliliters, which is okay. So long as that patient has a good, let me call it a good blood level, what we call hemoglobin level. So if her hemoglobin level is about 10, 11, 12, 150 means 200 means is nothing.
That's okay.
But if she has anemia of pregnancy, or just anemia, and her HB is, let's say, 6 or even 5, even that 50 milliliters is a problem for her. And 100 milliliters is going to be a big complication for her. So that placenta comes out, the uterus contracts, the bleeding stops. The same thing happens during a cesarean section. Once we have opened the abdomen, we opened the uterus, we get the baby out, and we get the placenta out, the uterus contracts. In the PPH, postpartum hemorrhage, what happens is that most of the time, the placenta does not, the uterus does not contract the way it should. So what happens is that those vessels where the placenta came out from, they are open and they continue bleeding into the uterus. Okay? That is one. And if there is no contraction, that bleeding continues coming. In the uterus, the blood gathers there. It comes out as clots. And if nothing is done, actually that woman is going to bleed to death. So that is one of the reasons where the uterus does not contract properly. The other reason is when during normal delivery, you may have tears on the cervix. If we imagine the uterus as a balloon, and where you blow air into is what you call the cervix of the womb. So during delivery, there is an opening. The cervix opens. And if the baby is big, sometimes it may stretch those tissues, leading to tears. If those tears are not noted early enough, and they are taken care of by putting a suture there, a stitch there, she'll continue bleeding, even if the uterus is contracted. So that can lead to PPH as well. If you have some tissue which remains inside the womb, the placenta, for example, sometimes the placenta does not come out completely. Bits and pieces of it may remain there. Or sometimes even the whole placenta can actually remain there, what we call placenta accreta spectrum. So the placenta can't come out, doesn't come out, and the baby has come out and there is bleeding, and we can't get it out. So that leads to that. And then a small percentage of patients have the problem with their clotting mechanism. So if the clotting mechanism is not okay, she will deliver. The uterus will be contracted. There will be no tears, but she'll continue bleeding. So those are the 4 T's that we
you look out for.
Yes.
I see that. And so then who is more at risk? Because right about now, there's a whole emphasis about women going to a hospital and giving birth in a hospital setting. But then again, we also have other instances where access sometimes is a problem. Or others would ideally, because our grandmothers, delivered at, right?
Yes.
So looking at these 2 scenarios, is it there's more that is more at risk than the other, or it just happens when maybe it happens?
There are risk factors. So there are women who are more at risk. We will look and see, we stratify and say, this one, there is a possibility that she can have postpartum hemorrhage. For example, if a woman has had postpartum hemorrhage in the past, she will have a risk If a woman is carrying a big baby, and we can actually see that during a scan, or sometimes just by looking at that abdomen, say, that abdomen is big, looks bigger than normal. Okay. And then when you do a scan, you see that baby is big, 4 kilos, 4.5 kilos. Actually, there 3 weeks ago, I was on call in KNH, and we had a patient who had the first baby was 6 kilos. She had delivered 6 kilos. Unbelievable.
Wow.
6 kilos. Yes. The second one.
Wait, that's possible.
Well, she delivered 6 kilos. Okay. The second one was 4.7 kilos. The third one was 4.5. The fourth one was 4.2. Yes.
Okay.
It happens.
Okay.
So this was her, I think, her 5th or 6th pregnancy. Yeah. She had, I think, 1 miscarriage. Okay. But the other thing is that she also had a problem. She had a problem with diabetes. Right. So with diabetics, we know that they will have big babies. But still, 6 kilos is huge. So the smallest baby she had delivered was 4.2, and she had delivered vaginally. It's just amazing. It's a miracle how she never had PPH. So, big babies, so that is a risk factor. If you're carrying multiple babies, twins, triplets, sometimes even 4 babies, quadruplets, that is a huge risk factor.
Okay.
If you have what you call fibroids, and fibroids are basically growths. So if there are fibroids, that will also mean that as the pregnancy progresses, those fibroids will actually grow with the pregnancy. Yeah. And when it comes now after delivery, that contraction will not be there, because whatever contractions start will be hampered by the fibroids which are there. So growths in the ovary, in the uterus, that is fibroids. If the amniotic fluid, the amount of fluid that surrounds the baby is a lot, what we call polyhydramnios, because then if the amount is more than what we want it to be, that is about 25 centimeters, so you find it is stretched. By the time the baby comes out, that uterus is very stretched. The mechanism of contraction is actually hampered because of that.
I see that, yeah.
Age is also a factor, unfortunately. Younger women, and I don't want to use older, so I use mature women, also have that problem. Okay. We have had cases younger and older.
Where are we looking at? The margins. Because if you ask a 40, 50-year-old woman, they'll tell you, I'm still young.
Yeah, of course, they're still young.
Right? Yeah, but really, what are the margins are we looking at?
We are looking at adolescents. Okay. Adolescent girls. And unfortunately, we are seeing quite a big number of adolescent girls, getting pregnant, 13, 14, 15, 16. If they get pregnant, their pregnancies usually may end up having complications, because their bodies, these are children, so their bodies are not yet mature. And when you talk about mature women, we are talking about 36, 37, when you get to 40, 41 and so on, and especially if you're having the baby for the first time, that there's a tendency for these age groups to have issues with hypertension, what we call preeclampsia in pregnancy. We have diabetes also, what we call gestational diabetes, and we also see a lot more PPH in them as well.
Okay.
And I also talked about if you had PPH in the past, then there is also a tendency of having that in the future as well.
I see that. And you see, one of the biggest questions, and also looking at Ronald's case, so he said, unfortunately, the wife passed on 2 weeks after delivery, and they had multiple twins. So the biggest question might be, is there like a specific duration that probably healthcare professionals are on the lookout for? Because the biggest question was 2 weeks later, and when you're talking about contraction,
Actually, when you talk about PPH, there is what you call primary PPH and secondary PPH. So the primary PPH is soon after delivery, to 24 hours afterwards. And then the secondary one will now be after that, even up to 42 days after delivery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unfortunately, if it happens that way, what we normally do is when patients go, when we discharge them, we inform them about the possible what you call the danger signs.
Okay.
So, for example, with a mother for the first time, say, look, if you're going to breastfeed, we want you to breastfeed, but if you find your breasts are engorged and the milk is not coming out, and you start having a temperature, a fever, please come to the hospital. If you feel like when the blood is coming out, is a lot more than expected, you're feeling several pads a day, that is also not okay. If you're passing clots, that is also not okay. If you start feeling dizzy, because when you start losing blood like that, it will affect your body generally. So please come and see, visit a hospital and see a doctor as soon as possible. Yes.
So then looking at where we are at as a country and how we're handling, I mean, maternity and all those things.
Yes.
How would you say we're handling cases of PPH? Are we in a place where we're sort of like able to prevent, maybe control? Where are we as a country? And then maybe we can look at across the region and how the rest of the world is handling the same.
That is a loaded question.
Yeah.
But I want to sort of approach it with a short story.
Okay.
It's a real life story which happened not too long ago. I was in one of the private hospitals, and I had finished a procedure I was doing, and I was going to change. And then I met my colleague, an anesthesiologist, shouting, telling me, please come to theatre 3 or theatre 4. We have serious PPH. So PPH is an emergency, number one. So wherever it happens, it has to be treated as an emergency. And there are some things which you have to do. So I came to this theatre and I found my colleague really struggling with this patient, and she was really poorly. The patient was really poorly. A young lady, 31 years old, and that was her first pregnancy. She had delivered small baby, an average baby, not small, 3.1 kilos at term. And after delivery, there were no tears. The uterus was contracted. There was a small tear in the vagina where my colleague had put 1 or 2 stitches, and it has stopped bleeding. But here I come and I find she's really struggling. There's what we call an abdominal pack, which we use to in surgery. When we're operating in the abdomen, we put it to separate organs. So you put an abdominal pack there, and after a few minutes, it will be completely soaked, and you'll have to remove it. So she had been struggling for some time. And as we say, 2 heads are better than one. So I said, do you mind if I have a look? She said, yeah, 2 heads are better than one. So I looked and I asked, were there any tears? No. Well, nothing. So you remember the 4 T's that I talked about. I massage the uterus. It feels as if it is contracted, but she's actually really pouring like a tap. So the next thing I asked my colleague, the anesthetist, have you given medications which help in the contraction? He says, yes, I've given all the medications. And, he rattles them off. I said, okay, so medication-wise, we are okay. But why is she still bleeding? And she's bleeding heavy. So I put my hand, just to examine, I put my hands inside the vagina and into the uterus. I felt as if there was something at the back of the uterus, most probably a fibroid. So my understanding, or rather my assessment, was that most probably the placenta had been lying on a fibroid. So when it came out, the vessels were still open. The uterus could not contract at that part. So that is why she was bleeding. So normally in such a case, we have what is called a uterine balloon tamponade. So it's something like a balloon. We insert it inside the vagina, fill it with fluid. It will block the vessels from bleeding, and it will start the clotting mechanism so that she stops bleeding. So I asked the theatre staff, do you have a UBT, uterine balloon tamponade? They say we don't have. Meanwhile, she's bleeding. Meanwhile, you can hear that anesthetic machine, going tick, tick. The pressure is actually and here she's just pouring. I said, okay, do you have a catheter? A catheter is a tube which we insert inside the bladder when we are doing operations. Said, yes, we have a catheter. Okay, bring me a catheter. And now I'm thinking about improvising something to insert inside the vagina. So I asked them for guess what? For a condom. And they said there was no condom. So I said, please get a condom.
What is it?
What is a condom? Actually, a condom, you remember the UBT that I talked about? This is factory made. So you just insert it and pump fluid into it, and it will expand. So now, with the catheter and the condom, we're actually improvising a UBT. So you insert the catheter into the condom and tie it. So once you've tied it, it will create a balloon at the end there. And insert it inside the vagina, and then push fluid through an opening in the catheter. So it will balloon nicely, and it will actually block the vessels which were bleeding. So one of the theatre staff walked out and came back after maybe a long 1 minute.
Because at one time,
Because meanwhile, she's bleeding. So she came back and said, excuse me, I wanted to say something. He said, yes. He said, I have a condom, but it was not in my purse. We said, we don't care where it was.
We don't care, but yeah.
Just needed, give it to us. So,
yeah.
So anyway, we improvised that. We inserted it inside, put it in water, and guess what? It stopped bleeding. You have never felt a sigh of relief like that. Stopped bleeding. So we made sure, we said, okay, just to make sure that there's nothing else, we packed it, we pushed in an abdominal pack. And we said, let this rest here for 24 hours without removing it. Then you'll be sure it will have blocked, it will have clotted, and the vessels will be blocked.
Yeah.
You asked what we are doing. What actually saved that lady? Several things, and I call them pillars. Number one, we had the human resource. There were 2 consultants on this side. There was a senior consultant on the other side, an anesthesiologist, who was monitoring the blood pressures, giving the medications, while we are struggling on this other side. The 2 of us now were struggling here, and we managed to get the reason for the bleeding, and we managed to stop it. After that, the medications that she got, the medications were all available that were needed.
Okay.
Give this, yes. This one is there, all of it. Unfortunately, in Kenya, sometimes we have stockouts, we don't have medications, or the medications we have are fake, unfortunately. So you give an injection, you expect the uterus to contract, it does not contract.
Yeah.
So we have a challenge there. So human resource, medications. Number 3, we had blood. It was a private facility. By the way, when she came to deliver, her hemoglobin, that is the amount of blood, was 11.1. By the time she went to the ICU, it had dropped all that bleeding. It had dropped to 3.1. Yes, 3.1.
Wow.
So she had lost about 2 liters of blood. Commodities. Of course, we didn't have that UBT that is factory made, but at least we managed to improvise one, which saved her life because it's the one which stopped her bleeding. There was an ICU unit, and an ICU, not a caricature of a building or a room, but an ICU with equipment, with medications, and with staff, dedicated staff who were trained to actually man. These are the 5 pillars. So human resource, good quality medications, we have blood, we have commodities, and you have a well-equipped ICU. And then you can add another one, accessibility. You talked about accessibility. There will be places whereby these women, in as much as they want to get to hospital on time, because of the poor infrastructure, they will not get there on time. And they will get to a hospital where you'll find, yes, the doctors are there, they have the experience, but they don't have blood. So as a country, we are not doing well. In most places, you actually have 2 or 3, or even all these pillars are not there. So that is why we are losing women the way we are losing, which is very sad.
It's very unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate.
So then the big question is, what do we do?
Many things we can do.
Yeah.
Many things we can do. We are wasting a lot of money in some things which don't make sense. And this is something which, you see, for example, when you talk about the human resource, there are some counties where we have, as from where I sit as the president of the Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, I know that there are some counties where you have 2 consultants, 2, 1, 2. So even if they work 25 hours a day, they will not be able to actually have a dent on this. So what are we saying? We're producing a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. These doctors, these nurses should be deployed to places where there is need. And there is an imbalance because, for example, most of my colleagues are actually in Nairobi and in the big towns, Mombasa, Eldoret, Kisumu, and so on. But the far-flung areas of Kenya, you find other colleagues are really struggling. So maybe a healthcare commission, sort of, that is just my thinking, would actually be able to help because it would say, Dr. Kireki, you have been posted to County X to go and work there, just like it used to be before devolution. But now we have devolution, we have 47 counties, 47 different ministries of health, 47 different policies probably. So the national government can sort of have an umbrella policy. But now when it comes to the particular counties, it becomes a different story altogether. We can have a budget for health, ring-fenced that this is just health. Not to go into one big basket and then we just do what? We just do expenses the way you do. I don't know whether that is what the counties do, but I think. And now, even when we get to that budget of health, we can actually have a certain portion ring-fenced that this is reproductive health. And remember, it's only reproductive health, which is actually included in the Constitution, that all Kenyans have a right to health, to the highest degree of health, and especially reproductive health, because they've recognized that these mothers, we have to take care of the mothers. If we don't take care of the mothers, we don't have a nation.
That's true. I see that. So then, is there a way that we can prevent? Because I know there's so much that needs to be done from policy, levels, all to availability of funds, to making sure that healthcare facilities are easily accessible, but from an individual, let's say, perspective, that is, pregnant mother, and then, healthcare facilities, what are some of the things that then we can put in place just to make sure that we don't lose mothers, really?
I think there are many things you can do. I think, number one, we have to start with creating awareness. What you don't know, you will not be able to sort of relate to. So people don't know about PPH. In fact, when you talk to some of our policymakers, they have no idea about PPH. I've had interactions with some of them, politicians. They say, what do you mean that 355 women are dying out of every 100,000? We don't know about this. So awareness is of importance. And at this point, I just want to highlight that the University of Nairobi, Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, as well as the Midwifery Association of Kenya, have come together to organize the first PPH run. And that will be on the 6th of October from Ulinzi Sports Complex. And we'll run all the way to around Timor and then come back. It's a short distance. It's about 4.5 kilometers one way and back. But we want to start that way to create awareness. We want people to start asking, what is PPH? And what implications does it have? If my wife was pregnant today, does she have, is she at risk of having PPH? And if she's at risk of having PPH, what then can be done before that to mitigate, chances of this happening? So it's basically welcoming and inviting all the Kenyans to come and run with us. And they can register at www.endpph.com. Once we have created awareness like that, we want this awareness to start from even primary school. Yeah, because when they grow up knowing that there's a problem with PPH, when a young child sees her mother pregnant, they say, Mom, have you heard about PPH? Hey, we don't want you to, that sort of thing. So creating that awareness is important. And then number two, we have to start talking about it. You remember with the HIV, the way it was in the beginning, it was hush, 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 until people started talking about it. Once that people start asking questions, then we can actually now hold the hospital, not the hospitals, but the administration, because they are the ones who hold the purse strings. What are you doing to our hospitals? Will our mothers get this care? And once we start asking those questions and holding these policy makers and the decision makers, especially in terms of finance, and because without finance, you cannot employ healthcare workers. Without finance, you cannot buy quality medication. Without finance, you cannot have blood, and so on. And by the way, as we are creating awareness about PPH, there is a very important commodity, which is blood. Without blood, you can have all the medication, but if you don't have blood, then it will not work. We have a problem on that side as well. Our colleagues from the hematology department say we collect about blood transfusion units, we collect about 276,000 units of blood. A unit of blood is that one bag. 276,000 units of blood. And that is about 60% of what we need as a country. We need about 500,000 units every year. And guess what? 70% of the 276,000 units we collect is used by who? By women who are coming to deliver. Most of the time, because of anemia, because of PPH. So we also need to create awareness that you donating blood once a year, even twice a year maximum, will actually go a long way in alleviating this problem. And then the other thing is about having quality medication. There is nothing as sad as that 60 years after independence, we are still getting madawa gushi. Can you imagine?
And we need to end the show, and my question would be, so moving forward, what is it that you'd want to see? Where do we need to start? Because clearly there's so much that needs to be done.
Yes.
Where do we begin from?
I cannot even question. But there's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
There is what we call Sustainable Development Goals 3.1, whereby we are supposed to reduce our maternal mortality rates by 2030 from the number that we have, whether it's 355 or whatever we have, to 70. But my thinking is, why should 70 women die?
Yeah.
It should be zero.
It
should be zero.
Yeah.
There are countries which have zero mortalities, Luxembourg and so on. But they have done this because there has been a consistent and a planned way and a very focused way of doing this. And we can do it. We have the reasons for fighting this amorphous challenge called PPH. Do we have the willpower? We have the willpower. Do we have the machinery? We do have the machinery. So we need to put all these things together. So the government needs to come in. And then you asked about what we can do as a community, as everybody. As professionals, number one, we are creating awareness. Number two, the doctors who are coming through the training channels, we want to sort of sensitize them such that by the time they go out there, wherever they will know that once something, PPH, it's an emergency, and this 1, 2, 3, this is what we need to do. We need to come to pull the community health promoters on board as well, because these are the ones who are going to see these women at the community level. And then, of course, the possible risk factors, they can actually tease them out and, direct them to that. Women who have these risk factors should be followed very, very clearly by the doctors and so on. In some counties, actually, what they have started doing is what they have high-risk clinics. Then there is what we call a surveillance and response after maternal deaths. And that some counties have actually started doing that on a weekly basis. The other thing is research and data collection. Because here we say the ministry has 355 out of every 100,000. International organizations say they have 550. So we don't have that data. And then we can actually, at some point, after 6 months, we say, look, this is the data we have, and this is real-time data, and these are the problems we are having. So without data, big-time data, we cannot solve anything. So I think that is also another thing.
Yeah, I really see that. Thank you very much, Dr. for your time today. I mean, so much, that has been discussed, so much that we need to do, and I'm pretty sure that at some point we will get there. All right, that has been Dr. Kireki Omanwa, who is the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society of Kenya, just helping us understand, first of all, how grave the situation is and what we need to do from a community level, professionals, the county, as well as the national government, because one life lost is too many, and we do not want to lose our women, especially in this day and age, to postpartum hemorrhage. My name is Winnie Lubembe. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you right here on Your World next time. Goodbye for now. Sasa you. Wait, tumalize haya. Okay. Sasa bye. Si like bye. Basi nitafanya hivi, bye. Lakini hata kama ni wewe huwezi kubali. You'll be like, absolutely not.
Karibuni. Hii ndio base ya the best local entertainment.
Tell me where my money is.
You don't know what they do to girls like you. Nakwambia mama Chantel amegeuka kwa mtoto siku hizi. Anabadilisha nguo kama mara 3 kwa siku.
Unahitaji msomaji habari aelewaye matukio na matokeo ya matukio.
Michezo hutegemea hewa safi.
Msomaji habari mweledi wa majimbo. Msomaji habari mweledi wa masuala ya kanda.
Nataka nisikie vile wewe kwanza unasikia.
Msomaji habari mweledi wa masuala ya ulimwengu.
Hapa jijini New York nchini Marekani.
Msomaji wa mtagusano, mvuto, mnato na haiba ya kuaminika. Habari zako za NTV ya dhuhuri zimepata sura mpya.
Mimi ni Lois Wangoi. Kila siku, kila wiki, kila tukio. Saa 7 adhuhuri kwa taarifa kuntu, tendeti na za kuaminika ni NTV adhuhuri.
Kuna mtu anasema ati mimi si agency. Ati mimi ni mkubwa sana, mimi si agency. Mimi si agency ulinisa. Unajua nini mwaka yangu? Mimi si agency. Sitaki hiyo mchezo bwana. Mimi usikai agency. Tulizaliwa na wewe. Unajua kweli. Sitaki hiyo mchezo bwana, mimi ni agency 001. Sisi tunaenda maandamano mapema. Agency.
Skiza na Nation.
There's no need to blame yourself for that. It's not like you actually told him to cancel his own wedding.
Well, about Nikolai, have you been able to contact him? You were just pretending to be nice and you were acting like you wanted to help me get together with him, when secretly you had feelings for him and you wish that he'd leave me for you.
Where did you come from?
Come. So this is where the magic happens. This is for you kids.
Taste the magic with our festive cakes from DPL Festive Bakery. Delight with every bite.
Are you ready?
Lete kingari nikusetie kifua. Niko na dem, mwenye kona dem pia. Masa flani ikifika na wachangamkia. After scene kabaridi sezi nkatulia.
Tunakubali. Gateka. Kila mtu.
Cash pop za Nyandarua ni mawaru.
Only on NTV.
This is NTV.
Hey folks, welcome to CFO Chat. As always, your weekly, most comprehensive look at the world of business, finance and economics. We are sitting down with the General Manager in charge of finance at Kenya Power following earning on steroids for FY 23-24, 30 billion in net earnings. Steve, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Steve, we've had some very tough conversations before. I'm delighted that this time is really on a positive note. So let's start from here. Looking at your numbers, your revenues are up 21%. Your costs are up by a marginal 5%. It looks like you really didn't sweat your business to unlock these earnings. Is it principally a function of the tariff revision?
Really, not entirely the tariff function. If you look at our half-year earnings, the tariff was actually already in play. The tariff was approved in April 2023, and so by the half-year, the entire half-year was within the new tariff. Now, the key dynamic there is it just goes to show the kind of impact that Forex has on our cost of sales, because the revenue growth, it was actually expected in terms of the plans that we have and the initiatives that we are implementing, as well considering the tariff. But then the power purchase cost, when we had the change in the Forex dynamics in February, that is the second half of the year, quite significantly, even the obligations that we had accumulated because of the unavailability of Forex in the first half of the year now became payable at a much lower exchange rate.
Yes.
And so we actually had a realized gain in the cost of sales that actually brought down the the power purchase cost quite significantly. And that speaks to the increase in the margin between the sales, the revenue and the cost of sales quite a bit.
Which is quite significant. But speaking about the debt aspect of it, there was the COVID-19 induced moratorium, which you do indicate when it expired in June 24, you decided we are not renewing it. How does the new repayment schedule look like, and what kind of weight is it inflicting in your financials?
The moratorium was first a 1-year moratorium, then extended up to June 2024. And during that extension, actually there was interest accruing, and also the amount that had been deferred. So that interest now was capitalized. And what we did, the government was actually discussing the balance sheet restructure, and that was part of the discussion because the transfer of assets, once they are valued to KETRACO, is supposed to net off on that balance of on-lent loans. And so when the moratorium expired, there was expectation that KPLC would apply for an extension to be able to finish the valuation of the assets and the transfer. But as an entity, we looked at that and realized that we are continuing to build this obligation by accruing interest, and we are not paying the loans. And the Forex impact has been quite devastating on our performance. Yeah. And so we made a deliberate decision to start the repayment. So what we did is we actually wrote to National Treasury and proposed to recapitalize based on when they were approving the moratorium, they had given specific conditions on how the moratorium will go, and when actually it matures, how we will be able to deal with the accrued amount. So we did that, we computed our schedules based on the terms of the loan, and started our payment. And so far they have acknowledged our payment, and now we are moving on with the repayment. As I said, between July and September, we've paid 3.3 billion shillings. And that is reflected because these loans are actually paid on a semi-annual basis, but because they are quite a number, there are about 8 loans. Yeah. So there are those that are in the September-March period. There are those that are in June-December period. And so in total, we expect to pay about in the regions of about 11.5 to 12 billion shillings in the financial year.
Okay. And speaking about the transfer of some assets to KETRACO, following their designation as a systems operator, what does the aggregate valuation of these assets look like, and how soon do you look to do that final transition?
The valuation of our assets, we actually carry our assets on a historical basis, historical cost basis. And what that means is that the price at which we bought them less the depreciation or amortization. And so you'd find that quite a number of our assets that have very long useful lives are actually really undervalued yes. as such. And that speaks to really even the valuation of the company itself when you look at it from the balance sheet as such, because these assets are the ones that generate the revenue that we are seeing as such. And so the process of valuation, the intention here, if you were to go by what the cabinet approved, was that the transfer is done based on a commercial valuation. And so there was a process to get really the experts to do the evaluation, and they have started. And you know, the unique thing here is that these assets are assets that are traversing and in various regions across the country and all that. They have other aspects like the way leaves they sit on and all that. Yeah. And so, and some of them have improvements that have been happening over time, and you'd find newer components within a particular substation, for example, and all that. They have fiber on them, so they have other revenue streams and some revenue share in terms of co-location for the telcos. So putting all that together, then we expect that the valuers that we have on board will be able to come up with the commercial values that will now be considered for the transfer. But then also what I should mention as well is that the initial intent, the underlying issue of the transfer of assets was actually the balance sheet restructure of KPLC yes. and looking at the negative working capital. And so if you look at the improvement of the negative working capital and the far that we've come, you just alluded to the fact that within the next 1 or so years, we should be able to come out of that. I think that also weighs into what should we transfer or what should we not transfer, and to what extent as such, if we now have a stronger balance, because these are the same assets that we use in terms of some of our customers are actually connected at transmission voltage, and so we might not be able to transfer those kind of assets as such. And also you talked about the control function, the national control function. Actually, that control function runs the system that runs even the distribution yes. grid. And so the transfer of that, KETRACO is actually building their own national control, and it's expected once they are able to complete, and then discussions around that, the transfer of that would actually continue.
Steve, on the negative working capital, and this was really the sweet spot for me in these earnings, because you and I have been having this conversation for quite a while. The decline year on year, 27, just about some 20-something billion shillings, quite steep. It looks like in FY25, one, you'll be extinguishing this issue of the negative working capital, and two, and more fundamentally, just walk us through how you have walked through this recuperation journey of your working capital.
It has been quite a very delicate journey and really being very intentional. The utility appears to be a mature utility, but then still quite expanding. And you know, the process of expanding, in our case, you'd find that you tend to convert a lot of your current assets into long-term assets as such, and it leaves you with current liabilities in the name of what you have to pay your suppliers of materials and the contractors and all that. And so we are at a time when we are starting out to really invest in our grid, quite especially because of the performance and where the business has improved and all that. We really need to do the refurbishment and maintenance of our networks to be able to serve our customers very well. And that speaks to really some pulling back into a bit of the things that would actually affect the working capital. But the journey has been, we actually scaled down our investments to very critical maintenance capex and very critical high impact projects over time. And that supported the kind of healing that we've seen on the negative working capital, and also really being very specific in where we invest the funds that we have, and also trying to really optimize in terms of our debt book and all that. During this particular period, there are instances where we've done some prepayments to some loans when we evaluate and see really that based on a cost-benefit analysis that prepaying part of a very expensive loan would actually give us some arbitrage in terms of benefits. Then we are able to prepay that. And what that does on the negative working capital, it reduces the amount of loan that is repayable within 1 year, and that helps to improve the working capital.
I raised this with you, Steve, that in the latest annual public debt survey, one thing that stands out to me is that unlike in the past where we have had Kenya Power being captured under guaranteed debt, including last year, this year we don't seem to be seeing Kenya Power under that consideration. What could have happened here? I would actually
associate that with the fact that what Kenya Power has is on-lent debt. Yeah. And KPLC is actually 50.1 owned by government, and 49%, almost 50-50, listed on the Securities Exchange. What that means is that there are private investors within the company, and the government would not specifically or entirely guarantee debt really to a company that is almost half private as such. And so what the government does, and still to afford us the concessional, being able to get some concessional financing, is that they actually on-lend this. So it's the government that has borrowed. There's a financing government between the lender and the government, and then there's an on-lent government that now comes to KPLC and quite matches the terms of the financing agreement, but now with a bit of the conditionalities that would come from government to KPLC, because KPLC also has some private shareholding in it. Okay. And you've mentioned that effective FY26, you want to have extinguished all commercial hard currency denominated debt. Yeah, that's actually one of my very, very key objectives. And that is entirely informed by the fact that Kenya Power revenues are entirely in Kenya shillings. Yeah. And so even as we venture into some FX revenues around fiber, and also trying to get some of our customers to pay us in foreign currency, that will be to take care of the cost of sales, which is long-term and it is denominated in foreign currency. And so that is the risk that is very difficult to deal with in terms of the FX risk of the cost of sales, because of the nature of the contracts and all that. You can't convert that. But on the debt side, there are a few flexibilities here that we can be able to really leverage on, and then reduce the exposure that, the forex exposure that comes with that. And so that I'm very deliberate about working towards June 2026, where we do not have any hard currency commercial debt as such. And the expectation is that, again, with the paying down of the on-lent debt from government, we should be able as well to have reduced that quantum, and going by what can be slashed off in the transfer, if at all, as such, then we would also have a very lean on-lent debt on that. I mentioned around the green financing from the World Bank, which is a $400 million facility But for KPLC, and during the negotiation, actually, one of the make or break points for KPLC was the currency, because we wouldn't be going through a process of even trying to transfer our assets to offset hard currency loan, and we are bringing on additional hard. It would actually be counterproductive. So in that, the government at that time was gracious enough and really to actually take up on the FX risk, because KPLC, the on-lent agreement to KPLC is in Kenya shillings.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like Kenya Power and this country by and large is in a dilemma. These earnings this morning have been heavily dominated by the need to lift the moratorium on PPAs. What guarantees is Kenya Power seeing that when we go that route, the argument of take or pay will have been addressed? And two, remember we had the conversation about the need to convert a lot of our PPAs into local currency denomination as opposed to USD. Will that have been addressed?
Julian, there are basic dynamics that actually inform what actually transpires in that particular space. Number one is that where we are at in terms of the margin, in terms of the generation versus the available generation that we have and the demand, as it were. So when we are now touching on some load shedding as such, then it becomes very necessary and quite urgent to be able to have some generation, and even given the lead time it takes to develop that. And really, when you look at the ones that are quick to generate are actually the solars and the winds, and those are quite intermittent and might not entirely deal with the problem. So now when, as the PS was indicating in the discussions, if we have local financing abilities in terms of being able to fund Kenya shilling PPA, that would be actually the best, because we would not necessarily bring in the foreign currency exposure, but then we would have funding that is long-term for a PPA that is actually local. And these PPAs have some very good stable returns for over the 20-year period, and that would be a very good investment for pension plans, for pension funds and other investment funds to actually consider, because it's actually a very serious investment opportunity, because the country needs it. If you look at our performance and really the various customer categories in terms of the growth of demand, other than the small commercial that indicated a slight decline, all the other categories, especially the industrial and commercial, were actually upward. And that's notwithstanding the fact that there are quite a bit of grid migrations, people going solar and some captive generation happening, but we still see demand growing. So with that pressure on demand and the peak demand that we see, new peak every 3 or so months, really indicates that we are running a risk if at all we do not have firm new generation, or we are running the risk of even depending on the neighboring countries, like now where we're importing 200 from Ethiopia, 200 megawatts, and we are looking to scale it to 400 in the next 1 or 2 years. So we are likely to end up in a situation where we are really dependent on that. The imports from Ethiopia are also in foreign currency, so that still becomes a challenge with that.
Are you curious about that dazzling look? How do you define beauty? And how to dress elegant, glitz, and glamorous? The Glam Show is here to answer all those questions and show you what's popping and what's the latest in the beauty and lifestyle world, because you need it. Look your best and fall in love with Into the Glam, only on NTV.
Ambalo limetatiza mafisi wengi.
Skiza na Nation.
Wagwan Bogitu, tuko ndani ya Kisii County gaki.
Hello, tumekaa kuangalia manzi huku busy na chapaje, talent ni gani na relationship zinawapelekaje?
Vijana wengine hawapendi kazi. Sababu najua ukiangalia hii kazi pia kuna ile like kuchafuka vumbi nini, lakini mimi niliamua kujiingiza ndani. Bora tu nipate riziki.
Kila Wednesday from 10 to 11 p.m.
ndani ya NTV na mimi Iviona.
Mimi Sanchez Male.
Na hii ni Shujaz TV.
Only on NTV.
Nayo.
Obe.
Sensodyne gives you long-lasting protections against sensitivity. And people come in and they're like, oh, it works. I can have ice cream and I'm not in any discomfort. I recommend Sensodyne because it works. It's brilliant.
Steve, the year under review, then good numbers notwithstanding, had recurrent incidences of pervasive power outage. National blackouts, we call them. I'm curious as to how this reflected in your numbers. Have you thought through how much did this actually cost Kenya Power?
The kind of interruptions that we had where we have a national outage, and a national outage is not just a flicker that comes on and then the power is back. There are certain standards in terms of the grid safety, the safety in terms of now the people and all that, and the safety of the equipment itself. That there's a protocol in terms of when the power has gone off and how it is brought back. And there's stepping mechanisms around. It's established that there's enough voltage, and then it starts at the plant or the center that actually fires it up, and then it goes cascading, and the entire network is brought back. If you recall, you'll see in the notices that are given to customers around that, usually say that now we have Mount Kenya and West Kenya back on supply. We are working on Nairobi, restoring Nairobi. It is that protocol that happens. Now, to your question, when that is happening, the time that is happening, we are actually not in business in terms of really sales, because for electricity, and unless you have storage, when you lose an opportunity to sell, that's a loss that you've lost. And that speaks to the kind of level of sales growth that you would have had in the absence of those kind of incidents. So it has an impact on the organization as such. And so to the economy, it has an impact because of we power most of the activities that happen, industry and all that. And that affects, and it has a ripple effect across. And so to the cause of that, there are quite a number of causes that would actually do that. The unavailability of a major generator to the extent that a certain percentage, up to 15%, is not available in an instant, then it causes the grid actually to really shut down and all that. If there's a transmission line that really goes off because of some incident or something happens and all that, it has that possibility of really having a widespread sort of outage on the network.
The first dividend in about 7 years, 7 cents per share, first and final. Market is quite excited. The market is up. I checked it this morning. I wonder, Steve, in my thinking, a bit premature considering the capital constraints you still have, how would you justify that payout?
One of the key roles of a leadership of organization is the value proposition to the shareholders. And so you've spoken about the 7 or so year drought for a dividend for the shareholders. And really, for an entity that is listed on a securities exchange and an entities that in the future would look to go into the capital markets, really to be able to raise funding, and when the time comes, it is important to give consideration to that. And in our market here, dividend has become a very important aspect whenever an entity is able to, in terms of its financial performance and its cash flows and all that. I know what you'd be focusing on would be the negative working capital. And as we've discussed, we have really come a long way with that. And my estimation, based on what we are looking at, is in the next 1 or 2 years, we should be able to really get out of the negative working capital. And so I think it is an important thing. And really, if you look at our shares, which are slightly below 2 billion shares, the kind of dividend that we're giving at 70 cents, and where we are at, really, we have not taken away the capital for the priority projects that we have really done balancing in terms of deciding the kind of dividend, the level of dividends to give. A shareholder would expect a dividend of 3 or 4 shillings given the kind of profit that we have. But I think based on the considerations that we've just discussed, that's how we came about with the 70 cents.
All right.
Yeah.
How do we stand in terms of arrears to, if at all they still exist, to KenGen? This has been a sticky issue for a long time. Given the kind of numbers we are seeing lately, I'd imagine now you are up to speed in payments.
Actually, we are almost there. If you recall, before the Forex issue, we would be in the regions of 90 days and 90 to 120 days. Yeah, and around there for KenGen and the IPPs and all that. Now, when the Forex issue became at the worst of the Forex challenge that we had, some of these guys were actually 9 months out. And so when we had the market shift in mid-February and Forex was available and the rest, the Kenya shilling was strengthening and all that, we did quite some significant payments. Actually, we had to even space that payments quite a bit, and so so far we accelerated the payments, and so far now, like for KenGen, we are 2 months or less in terms of the payment where we are at now, and with the IPPs still in the same region, nobody's actually 3 months off going, so we are in a good place as it were, and we expect to improve on that as we go forward.
How do this 2 months or less look like from a quantum?
Actually, the KenGen's bill in a month is the region of about 6.5. It varies depending on the net output that we take in a particular month. And so 2 months out would be, and we have a 40-day credit period with KenGen. Yeah. So ordinarily 2 months would be outstanding because the month for 30 days and then the 10 days as such. So I would say almost like we're on the 3rd invoice or something like that. As going, so I'll put it in the region of about 16, 17 billion thereabout.
Final question. I was pretty intrigued by the decline in sales to the small commercial. Is it a function of the softening economy? Is it a function of people finding alternatives other than Kenya Power?
Okay, both that would say as such, but there's one aspect that brings that about in terms of the way the tariff is structured now. When you consume 1,500 units, and there are those steps in terms of now that determine that now you are a commercial industrial customer or you are a small commercial customer. And so what the current tariff regime provides is there is a switching between bands. Yeah, and so you'd find that certain specific customers who are small commercial have moved to commercial industrial because of they have reached a level where they have consistently over the last 6 months consumed beyond a certain level, and so they would be on the other side. It would appear like small commercial has really gone down. But to your point again, I think it's important to note that there are certain specific sectors of the economy that have really had a challenge, right from COVID and a bit of the high interest rates and all that. There have been defaults. You've seen auction of properties and things like that in newspapers and all that. That really, there's a ripple effect of such happenings in the economy, and you find that certain specific industries really bear the brunt of that. And so there are certain sectors in that. And as I had mentioned earlier, as an organization, we are looking at ways in which we can be able to really support those kind of our customers who have those kind of challenges in terms of longer payment plans, ways in which we can smart meter them so that they take advantage of their time of use tariff if they can do their work or their production at off-peak.
Steve Bikiru, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Julian. Always a pleasure.
We've been having a conversation with Stephen Bikiru, the General Manager Finance at Kenya Power, following the stellar set of earnings released for FY 23-24. We shall keep tabs on this counter, especially at the stock exchange, to see how it fares going forward.
Karibuni. Hii ndio base ya the best local entertainment.
Tell me where my money is.
You don't know what they do to girls like you. Nakwambia mama Chantel amegeuka kwa mtoto siku hizi. Anabadilisha nguo kama mara 3 kwa siku.
Get ready to tantalize your taste buds and embark on a culinary journey with Pishi Bomba, the ultimate cooking show that brings the flavors of the world right into your living room. Tune in this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with me, Claire Karatu, for a mouth-watering adventure. Pishi Bomba. Cook, eat, enjoy.
Welcome to Nairobi Comic Convention 2024 by Nikon, where fandoms unite in an unforgettable celebration of comics, gaming, tech, animation, dance, and so much more. Step into the world of endless imagination. Meet comic artists, cosplay, supercars, or esports tournaments. Nairobi Comic Con has something for everyone. Mark your calendars for November 16th, 2024 at the Junction Mall from 10 a.m. onwards. Get your tickets now at www.nikon.co.ke. This event is proudly sponsored by Nation FM.
There's no need to blame yourself for that. It's not like you actually told him to cancel his own wedding.
Well, about Nikolai, have you been able to contact him? You were just pretending to be nice and you were acting like you wanted to help me get together with him, when secretly you had feelings for him and you wish that he'd leave me for you.
Where did you come from?
Come with me. So this is where the magic happens. This is for you kids.
Taste the magic with our festive cakes from DPL Festive Bakery. Delight with every bite.
NTV, turning on your world.